Well, if you enjoy thrill rides, San Diego's most terrifying roller coaster can be found at Petco Park. They are called the San Diego Padres. And this is the On Friar podcast, and we will do our best to make sense of this team that looks like world beaters one night and looks like they struggled to, avoid finishing in last place the next.
Their run totals look like a picket fence, Darnay.
Ups and downs.
One.
Hard to make sense of it, but we will do our best to take a stab. And the gang's all here. Derek Togerson, Todd Strain, I'm Darnay Tripp, and it is great to be with you on an off day before the ride gets even wilder because they're headed to Coors Field. So who in the world knows what this weekend is going to look like, but at least gives you some confidence that they might not score just one single run on Friday, but who knows? This trend has been pretty rock solid. So we'll see how it goes. First things first, thanks to OGs, the sponsor of the On Fire podcast. Head to OGs.com, sign up, download the OGs app. You can now visit your local OGs, eat pizza, drink beer, earn rewards. OGs rewards available at select OGs locations. Make sure to head to OGs if you got a big game you want to check out. What's on the docket now? We got NBA Finals, Stanley Cup Final, of course, Padres games, U.S. Open coming up, French Open still going on, Roland Garros. So whatever your sport of choice is, head to OGs. Obviously, great menu items, new featured menu items coming out all the time, new beers. So hit up OGs. Thanks to OGs and all they do for the On Friar podcast. Time for the walk-up music. It is always great to be with you. This is the On Fire podcast, and excited to be joined by Derek, excited to be joined by Todd. Todd spent just countless hours in the Padres clubhouse this past week, so he's really, he's on the pulse of the squad right now. So excited to get your perspective and hear what's been said amongst the guys. And Derek, great to be with you. And you just had the trip to Lake Elsinore to catch up with everybody's favorite 17-year-old. So I'm sure we'll have some Ethan Salas discussion as well. But we'll start just with kind of the state of things. Derek, I'll let you lead things off. I mean, is it Gary Sanchez? Is it the last month or so of Juan Soto? Manny Machado started to warm up a little bit. Wildly inconsistent or maybe super consistent in their inconsistencies. What is top of mind as you take the pulse of the Padres right now?
I don't freaking know. I can't figure this out. I don't, seriously, I know it's a kind of cop-out answer. I don't get it. Todd and I were talking about this in the newsroom a little bit earlier today. It feels like you're supposed to kind of stay even keel through a 162-game season, right? I'll go back to Friday. I was out there pregame and then postgame. That was a game they lost 2-1. And before the game, they just come back from scoring 10 runs in Miami. Everything awesome, fantastic, feeling great. Everything's starting to maybe feel like we're going to turn that corner. Everything's fine. And then go out and score 1 run. And then after the game, it's just the door. I don't know what's happening with this. I don't get it. We should be there. And it feels like they're just riding these highs and these lows instead of trying to stay more in the middle. And I think, and Todd, you can sound off on this too. It feels to me like when they win, they're really, really getting happy about it, almost like they're trying to hope that if they push themselves into this level of joy, they'll be able to stay there. But I don't want to say it's manic, but it's almost like when you try too hard to make yourself believe an emotion is real, then you hold on to it too tight, and then you start to press yourself again. And then you realize, okay, we're not there yet, and you get back to baseline the next day, play how you're capable of, and then you try to grasp onto that, and then then you fall back down again. That's from more of a sports psychology perspective. But
I was going to say, we're really getting deep into the psychology here.
Yeah. Well, to piggyback off you, and not to make light of mental health, but it's almost like there's a bipolar baseball team in that locker room after the games. As you said, the big win on Wednesday. We're joking with Fernando Tatis Jr. if he's going to wear his sunglasses, for the media sessions. telling him it looks cool. He's laughing. He's having a great time. You're in there after a loss, one of these recent home games where they've scored one run. The players aren't even looking at each other, much less talking to each other. It's like a morgue. They think they're terrible. Their sound bites lend you to think that something is terribly wrong, chemistry, or something's terribly wrong with the relationship between the coaching staff and the players. There are all sorts of hints they're dropping that there are problems. It's two completely different dynamics. They win. They're like, we're great. Everything's good. Manny Machado says, we're clicking. We're about to get hot. We're on a roll. They lose. It's like they just lost Game 7 of the World Series and nobody wants to talk about anything. And they're dropping hints like junior high girls. I mean, it is the weirdest dynamic. So as Derek said, like, who knows? I mean, you think one game they're going to go into Colorado and start rolling, but who knows? Nothing they have done in the previous weeks or months of this season would lead you to believe anybody has any idea, including themselves, of what's next or what the next series is going to bring.
Well, and there was all the talk about, trying to read between the lines of what Juan Soto said. What was that on Sunday? I don't remember what the days were at this point. But just about him basically saying, I don't know. I mean, ask somebody else. I don't have the answers. And he even said that again to you or in the scrum after the win on Wednesday. And, kind of a lot was made of that. I just think it's him just saying, I can't speak for everybody. I can only speak for myself. I'm not going to be the mouthpiece for everybody. And this is why we have coaches and front office personnel and all that. But everybody just seems to be at a loss. And I think they're just, Bob Melvin, it's like every single game when they have a productive game, he's saying, well, yeah, just got to finally string a couple of these together and all that. And it's kind of become a broken record. It's almost getting to like Jay Stingler battle levels where you're hearing the same things over and over and over again. But we're not getting the results. And so often you hear just one big game, is all it takes, and get some momentum and build off one another. And that obviously isn't the case. And you're right. It seems like they're just trying to kind of will it or speak it into existence. But it's just baffling how a team could look so good, function so well. The 2 wins in Miami where they score a ton of runs, and you got like they're hitting like 400 or 500 runners in scoring position and all these things. How do you look so completely different the next day? Like even on Sunday, they go down early. You obviously have a huge mountain to climb. What was it, 7-0 after the third inning or what have you? But you've got time, right? You've got time. You got a bunch of all-stars. We've seen in the last couple of weeks that they can score runs in bunches. And they got that one across, what was in the third or the fourth. Jake Cronenworth gets thrown out when he runs into the ump. And it seemed like even that kind of took the wind out of the sails a little bit. And it was lifeless from that point on. And I think that's what has been frustrating for certainly fans, but just anybody following the team is like when they do get down, and we know their track record or lack thereof, like if they're trailing in the 8th, it's pretty much curtains. But even earlier in the game, when they do get down, it's rare to see kind of the type of like grit and fight, required to kind of get back into it. And that's been discouraging from a team that, the potential is there to put up a crooked number any inning and get into a game. Urgency hasn't been there. And I know Machado was at like after Monday's win kind of joked like, hey, we showed a little urgency, didn't we? But like, sure you did, it looked a lot better, but
yeah, Manny snark is getting a little out of control now.
I just want to see a little more grit, when they're up against it. I want to see that, and it's just not there as often as it probably needs to be.
Yeah, you saw it with Odor, right? And in Washington, you saw it with Odor. I was with the first time they were 0-22 when they were trailing after 8 innings, and then they finally got that win. You're thinking, okay, maybe they do have the guys in here, and yet they're still, as you said, falling back or falling behind. And if one thing goes kind of a little wacky on them, it's like they just, okay, this is not our day, and they just kind of ride it off. Where's the Jorge Alfaro of this group? Where's the guy who's going to have the walk-off knock? Who's going to be the, let's bleep and go San Diego guy? Who's going to be the guy who says, no, we're not taking this lying down. If we have an out, we have a chance. I haven't seen that yet all year long, except from, again, Odor, who was his entire life. And even Bob Melvin even said it after that game where he had the big knock against the Red Sox. He has never had an at-bat where he has not been completely confident in his entire career. They need more guys like that, or taking that approach at least. We're saying, listen, I'm going to cut off my own arm and try to stab you with my humerus so I can get on base, and then let the next guy try and do the same thing. That level of battle is not there from this group yet. I know it's in there. It just hasn't. Maybe it's hibernating. Maybe Gary Sanchez brings it out. I don't know where it's gone. It's not disappeared. It's just not showing itself now, and I don't know how to get that back out of these guys.
Yeah, it's interesting because in previous seasons with mostly the same group, that hasn't been the case. They have had all sorts of great comeback wins. They have had games where they've struggled early in the game and had terrible at bats, and then in the middle innings they've found themselves and had better at bats and totally flipped the game. So it's a real head scratcher. It's a different MO than this team has had for years. But you are right, Derek. It is, you can tell early in the games if this team has it, if this particular player has it or not. I mean, I don't know how many times I've watched Trent Grisham in that first at bat, and I can tell right away this is going to be a 3 or 4 strikeout day. And that goes for most of the guys on the team. Manny's been like that. Soto's been like that. You can go up and down the lineup. So you know what you're getting early, and it's pretty obvious if you're getting an A Padre effort or if you're getting a C minus or worse. Something's got to change. And mostly that's on the players to flip that. You can't put that on Melvin or the front office.
Yeah, and these one-run games, it's not like they're facing, the Sandy Alcantras of the world. This guy like Jamison Tylon, who came in with like a 27,000 ERA, is giving up 1 run. I mean, Marcus Stroman is good. He's not that good. He's really good. We've talked about him on the podcast. Love to have him. He shouldn't be doing that to you in your own ballpark. Logan, Tyler, whatever Gilbert it was, I don't even know which one it was, should not be giving up 1 run over however many innings. You're not facing the Justin Verlanders and Max Scherzers of the world here. These are guys you should be at least competitive against, and that's been a problem. Guys you need to beat, they're not beating, and I don't understand why.
I was just looking at some of
Logan Gilbert. It was him, yes.
Some of the comeback wins, that sort of thing. I was trying to find. They had 36 comeback wins last season. Oh, they have 12 already? Must have been early in the season. I don't know.
Yeah, but quote unquote comeback wins mean
yeah.
They gave up a run in the first inning and came back to win. How many did they have from the 7th inning on?
Yeah.
That's what we're getting at here.
Yeah. And it's no, it's not been there. And I thought, with Cruz coming in, with Carpenter coming in, with Bogarts coming in, I thought I'd feel a little bit better about kind of where the makeup of this team, the personality, leadership, all these types of things, and not to put it on those guys. It's just it just leaves a lot to be desired. And as these guys, as these guys get more established, as guys like Machado are here for longer, and you bring in these new pieces, these new established pieces, guys that have a track record and kind of have some leadership stuff to them. I didn't expect to have some of these conversations around this team that we've had on top of just kind of the offensive ineptitude that I know Fernando kind of touched on yesterday, Todd. Like, there's been all these expectations of us because of the big names, and what did he say? We're going to have more games like this than we have otherwise. But to this point, you've had more bad games than good, and you're like 24th in runs scored. You're last in average with runners in scoring position. You're next to last in average. You can try and speak it into an existence, and maybe that's part of the problem. Just kind of this assumption that it's just going to happen. But how many games into the season do you have to get before you realize it's not just going to be handed to us? It's not just going to happen. Like, we got to take it. What that looks like, I don't know. But this confidence that everybody had going into the season was maybe a bit flawed or misguided.
Yeah, Fernando, I believe he said that's baseball. You come in and even no matter how good you are, that's baseball. Things are going to happen. That's correct. Yeah, that's baseball. But the thing is that you have to search far and wide through the annals of history to find a team that is this well constructed with guys who have had established, successful careers consistently. We're not talking about a major league roster that has flash in the pans. These guys have been great for multitudes of years. Most of them, 90% of this team is not carrying their weight. So Fernando can say that's baseball and things are going to happen, but that's belittling the fact that most of this Padre roster has not performed, and they have not come through when they are being paid to come through, specifically these big-time hitters with men on base. That's the issue. We can talk about the struggles of Hassan Kim and Austin Nola and stuff like that, but if Manny was raking, if Soto had been raking all season, if Tatis had not been suspended and been in the lineup and been raking, we'd be having much different conversations now about this team. Those big guys are not carrying their weight, and that needs to change. And that's how you flip the season. No matter how many homers Gary Sanchez hits or what Odor does in the clutch or flips, Gary Sanchez and Odor are probably not saving the season. They've been great for the last 9, 10, 12 games. The Padres have not gained any games in the standings. They need the big guys to carry their weight at the plate.
Okay, Todd, let's play off what you just said, because I think you hit on an interesting point here. Tatis is still trying to play his way back into understanding how sliders are shaped. You know, what do you do with all these different types of pitches? He's still remembering how to play the game again. His natural talent ability has made him very successful and effective for the most part. He's going to get better. Manny's been playing hurt, probably for more of the year than we realized. Xander's been playing hurt, definitely for more of the year than we realized. Cronenworth, I think, is probably trying to justify the contract. He looks like he's pressing and just doesn't look like he really knows what's going on at the plate right now. Grisham has been playing stupid. He's not swinging the bat the way that he has shown he has a capability of. I don't know what's wrong with him.
That's
Sanchez
being kind.
Like, at least temporarily, Gary Sanchez has fixed the catcher spot, which is nice. By the way, not only offensively, pitchers have a 1.89 ERA throwing to him behind the plate. Baseball Savant says his pitch framing and blocking have both been better than they have at any point in his career. He's completely resurrected himself in San Diego, and hopefully he continues to move on, which is fantastic. Ha-Seong Kim probably is what he is. He'll have 3 or 4 really good games, 3 or 4 really bad games, a couple of average games. He's going to be that guy, but he's always great defensively. So when you get, let's assume Manny gets healthy and becomes Manny Machado. Bogarts gets healthy and becomes Xander Bogaerts. Soto continues to do what he's done lately, which is be Juan freaking Soto. Sanchez continues any semblance of what he's done. And you've got Cronenworth somehow figures out and becomes the all-star guy that we've seen before. If you get those guys just doing what they should be doing, and again, if it's injury for a couple of them, you figure that's going to happen. Are we overreacting right now? Are the answers sitting here right in this lineup? And the second that everybody feels better again, the lineup is going to take off and do what we've been expecting them to do. Is it as simple as get healthy, get acclimated, stop pressing, let's roll?
It's as simple as this. I mean, the way Major League Baseball's season and postseason are structured now and how many teams get in, you can have these early season struggles and you can be underachieving and you can be having a bad season, but that can still lead to postseason success. Padres, they're so bad, but they're only 3.5 games out of the wild card. I mean, all these early season troubles are forgotten if they get into the postseason and flip the switch. So, like, we can sit here and bemoan all this, but as we talked about at the beginning of the season, the real season for the Padres is the postseason. And as long as they're in the National League, they would have to really fall off a cliff to not be in that wild card playoff chase, because one great September, October run wipes out all this.
And I mean, they're certainly not the only team that went into the season with high expectations that struggled. You look at the Mets, you look at the Phillies. Trey Turner to this point hasn't kind of lived up to the billing. Cardinals have been dreadful. You just have the Diamondbacks kind of seemingly coming out of nowhere and having a great season, and Dodgers doing what they're doing. And
that's not sustainable.
And, continuing to look up at the Giants. The one thing that I found, scrolling reference, I finally found it. Record in 1-run games last year, 30-17. So they were really, really good in 1-run games. They obviously won a bunch of extra inning games, 12-5 in extra inning games. Record in 1-run games so far this season, 3-11. So, I mean, it's just kind of one of those little details about this team, whether it's a lack of fight or just not getting quality at bats. We obviously know that the struggles with runners in scoring position that has kind of been alleviated a little bit the last couple weeks, but it really depends on what game you're talking about because right in the middle of kind of their big performances, you'll have a game where they're like 0 for 8 and leave 9 guys stranded. So it's not like that issue is gone, but you're seeing a bit more. You're seeing them deliver a bit more consistently than they were early in the season. What's your guys? I mean, you guys, Todd, you're talking about the playoffs. Like as we stand here right now, give me a number. Like, what percentage are you confident the Padres will make the play? I err on the optimistic side, so I'll go 85, 90%. Like, I still feel like they're going to figure it out. They're going to make the playoffs. There's a lot of talent on this team. All the things that Derek just said that have kind of worked against them. Now, I don't know if I'm as confident as he is that Xander Bogaerts will get right. I mean, I'm a little bit worried about that kind of being a thing that lingers. And obviously when you're between cortisone shots, when something aggravates it, as we see, it's a problem. But I do think, based on some of the things that we've seen, and some of the stuff that's worked against him, just Fernando not being around and having to get reacclimated, Machado's injury and this and that. Like, I think they're still going to get there. It's just been a trudge. So I'll say like high 80s, low 90s. I feel pretty strongly. Where are you guys at?
About 80, somewhere in the 80 range, just because of some of the things I touched on earlier. The National League is not good. I don't see any of those teams in that wild card mix, and really in the NL West. Running away from the Padres. And it would take the Padres' everyday batting order is so loaded. It would take months of continued putrid play for this team not to win more games. I mean, they would have to have epic failures at the plate from multiple guys in one season not to just get near 500 or a little 500. So I give it, I'm at 80% if you need me to give a number for Padres to the playoffs. What say you, Derek?
Look at the other side of this as well on the pitching staff. Joe Musgrove just became Joe Musgrove again. Blake Snell just became Blake Snell again. Yu Darvish just became Yu Darvish again. Michael Wacha has been a godsend. You got to figure Seth Lugo is going to come off the IL and Ryan Weathers is not in the starting rotation. I think they've got enough arms right now to be able to handle it. Robert Suarez should be back to help the bullpen any minute. Now, Tom Cosgrove has been an absolute revelation in the bullpen. Now, is he going to throw 50 scoreless innings to start off his big league career? Probably not, but I can't with that slider. I can't say no, he's not going to. Even Juan Soto says that pitch is nasty. But defensively, also, they have been one of the best teams in all of baseball defensively this year, and gotten even better with Sanchez behind the plate. So if you look at all of this, and again, just like Todd said, does anybody believe the Pirates are going to stay there the entire year? Probably not. Anybody believe that the Diamondbacks are going to continue to play the way that they're playing right now? Probably
Maybe
not. Now you're talking about also what's going to happen. Trade deadlines. Yeah. So all these teams are probably going to change at some point during the season. So you're talking about confidence level. Given the fact they have so many teams to climb over, I'm more like 65% confident right now that they are going to make the playoffs. And a lot of that has to do with, and even Bob Melvin said it on Wednesday, we've got it in us to win 8 out of 10, win 10 out of 12. And we're going to have to go on a run like that at some points. And they certainly have the capability of doing that. And he knows we have to do this now. We have to win 10 out of 12 at some point to be able to get ourselves back into contention. We all know they can. Hell, they can win 12 in a row. We know they have that ability. The question is it coming? And that's what I don't know how many times I can ram my head against a wall saying, yeah, it's in there. It's going to come. And I'm not seeing any real evidence that it's going to come. So I'll like 60, 65% right now because I want to believe it, but I'm also not going to be naive enough to say it's going to happen.
Well, we're all, Darnay, I was going to say, we're all very positive still on the Padres playoff chances. But if you want a red flag, to me, a red flag is Bob Melvin in those post-game press conferences. As we know, throughout his career, he is even-keeled. He's seen just about everything from his days as a player to a manager in both leagues. He is visibly frustrated, out of answers, and upset in those post-game press conferences when they lose. He doesn't like their approach at the plate. He doesn't like their situational hitting. He doesn't understand what's going on. So those are red flags to me that Melvin, a major league lifer who is even keeled, is kind of off kilter by what he has seen in these putrid Padre one-run efforts and inability to get a flow to the season.
Well, it's like being a parent. Like you tell your kid one time, all right, hey, stop doing that. And they go, okay. And then they don't do it. And then they go back to doing it again. You're like, hey, stop doing that. And then they don't do it. And then they go back to doing it. Stop doing that. And then they don't do it. And then they go back to doing it. He's got to feel like I told you guys to knock it off. And then they keep going back to doing the same stupid crap. So he's got to feel like, dude, what you know what works and you know what doesn't work. Why do you keep going back to what doesn't work on such a consistent basis? Knock it off.
Don't hurt yourself, Derek. Don't hurt. I know this is frustrating.
But, that was Bob Melvin impersonation. Right there.
We can't have you going on the IL.
Oh, my concussion
so
protocol.
I've had 6 concussions already. I'm good.
And yeah, I mean, he did raise his voice at one point. He had that Bob Melvin, we were all talking about September in Arizona when he let the guys have it. And we had that instance already and nothing came of it. And so I think that was a little discouraging because I think just given how things played out last year when he kind of got into the team a little bit, we thought it would have the same effect, and that has not been the case. And so maybe he's just kind of struggling to figure out the pulse of this team. And, I get maybe it's just a different challenge for him, managing a star-studded roster when he didn't have that in Oakland. He didn't have the investment. He didn't have this giant payroll. And yeah, of course had some good players, but it wasn't to this extent. And so maybe I think that a lot of people are wondering like, hey, what happened to the guy that was in Oakland that, made all these very modest, cheap rosters playoff teams on a regular basis. And why hasn't that been the case? That has been the case because they did it last year, but how come we've spent so much of, the regular season wondering why this team is underperforming? And it's baffling, and it's hard to kind of find any of the answers. And I think that's just been the crux of the frustration with this team, is that they're just so all over the place. Again, I think there have been some promising signs. I think, we went through such a stretch of the season where they were just completely lifeless offensively, and that hasn't been the case. It's just been one game to the next. And I mean, yesterday, 10 2-out hits. They went the other way a bunch, multiple hit games up and down the lineup. But again, it's like, this isn't breaking news to anybody. We knew that they had this capability. It's just kind of been waiting a long time to see it come to fruition. And so here we are. And what level of confidence do we have going into Coors Field that this is the start of a winning streak, that they can actually get through past 3 to 4 in a row starting on Wednesday and continuing through Coors Field? It seems like a tough place to do it, but at some point, like Derek said, you're going to have to do it. Like you're not going to make it through winning 2 games and occasionally 3 games at a time.
Well, it was interesting. So in the locker room after Wednesday's game, everyone, all the beat writers and the local TV people, we knew Thursday was an off day. So you're looking for sound bites that you can air on Thursday and run leading up to that Rockies series. So everyone was asking the Padre players about their confidence level. Can you keep this offense going into the friendly confines, the hitter's ballpark of Coors Field? And not one Padre of the 4 or 5 that we talked to said, oh, I think we're going to go to Coors Field and light it up. They all kind of were, they said, we don't really know. But they also said, which was interesting to me, when they were asked what they thought of Coors Field, nobody said, I like to hit there. Juan Soto was kind of like, it's all right. It's not the greatest. Tatis was like, it's just a ballpark. Nobody said, I can't wait to get to Colorado and mash and keep this hitting going from the carryover of the final game against the Mariners. So that was interesting versus in previous season, we've heard lots about guys loving to go to Colorado and just pad some stats and send some balls, out over the wall. None of them really embraced going to Colorado. So I have no idea what to expect this.
I like that. I like that though, because that means that they are, I hope that means that they are sticking to the process. You know, where you can't just roll the ball out and go, we're in Coors Field. That's an extra 30 feet on my pop-up, so the ball's gone. I think they're reminding themselves we have to be about our process. We have to grind at bats. We have to go out there and put the ball. We have to do the things we need to do to always be focused every pitch to be able to be a successful offense. I hope that's what that means. And they're not just going, oh, Colorado, look at what we did in Mexico City. 16 runs, here we come. I like that to an extent. Now, Darnay, the original question, I think they can get to 3 in a row. Sunday is going to be difficult because Blake Snell's career numbers at Coors Field are freaking terrifying. So unless they do win a shootout, or for some reason it clicks and he figures out exactly what to do at Coors Field. And again, his last start gives me actually a little bit of hope that he will be able to do that up there, because he threw the slider almost not at all. He was fastball changeup, and that changeup was really, really good. So maybe if he takes that approach, it's, more fastball, more changeup, and then abandon the slider a little bit, that obviously for him does not work as well at altitude. He might be able to have a much better start than he usually does when he goes a mile high.
If you are watching us live on YouTube, get into the comments. Let us know what you think. How confident are you that the Padres will
We're on
make the
YouTube
playoffs?
right now?
We are, so be careful.
You're a YouTuber, Togerson.
See that thing that says live? Or if you're watching on wherever you find us, if it's on NBC San Diego streaming, if it's on your old school podcast app, however it is, we certainly appreciate you being with us. And our buddy Chuck hit me up on Twitter, says, at what point do the Padres look for a new voice coaching these guys? And I don't think I might be crazy, but I'm very much along the lines of Bob Melvin is safe.
Wait, is he talking about like a hitting coach or changing managers? If it's changing managers, that's a stupid question.
Yeah, I think a new voice coaching these guys. I don't think he's talking about Ryan Flaherty and the assistant to the hitting coaches. I think he's talking about Bob Melvin. I think Bob Melvin's probably good.
Yeah, Bob Melvin's going nowhere, and he should not go anywhere. He is still the guy who took you to the NLCS last year. And here's always the question when people say, "We'll get rid of that guy." Who do you replace him with? Do you have a better viable option right now to try and save the season than Bob Melvin? And the answer is no, you don't. Unless for some reason somebody cloned Bobby Cox and has him ready to go and launch on Alert 5. You're just stop with that. No, just no.
I agree.
Well, I agree. Hold. I agree with you. Bob Melvin's safe. There's probably not going to be a change at manager. But if this continues, remember, it's always easier to change the manager than to change the players, especially when you have this particular group of Padre players with huge contracts that go the next 10 years, and if they're stinking it up early in the season. So yes, Bob Melvin is a good manager. He's a pretty good bet to turn this thing around, and his job is definitely safe. I agree, but it is easier to change the manager or the coach than it often is to change the players.
But that seems like change for change's sake. When you're talking
sometimes
the track record of Bob Melvin.
Sometimes a shakeup. Maybe you can like Bob Melvin, and you can think Bob Melvin's a great manager, and you can think Bob Melvin is the right manager long term that you want to have leading your franchise. But if you are in a win now mode for this season and these next 2 seasons, sometimes a shakeup gets you there. I'm just saying.
But again, who do you replace him with? Who's out there?
I don't want to have this conversation.
Me neither. Sorry, I brought it up.
There's nobody out there who you're going to go back to another guy or pulling up from the minor league somewhere who's a first time skipper. You're going to who do you have? Who are you going to find who's going to be better than Bob Melvin? I can't think off the top of my head anybody.
No, nobody would be better. It would be a different voice. That would be the only reason. I'm devil's advocate on this one.
Yeah, you are the devil's advocate,
and I'm not a devil.
And you played it well, Todd. That was well done. I feel as someone who often plays devil's advocate myself, that was pretty good.
Apologize.
Derek, I know you put a little something together on the web on Gary Sanchez, and I feel like it's worth talking about the latest savior of the season, Rougned Odor and Gary Sanchez, the heroes of the 2023 San Diego Padres, and even you mentioning Snell, and then you mentioned his pitch framing. I mean, how many strikes, how many pitches did he save Blake Snell with his framing and getting some of those borderline type pitches
Well,
in the
that was the home
zone?
plate umpire was terrible.
Well, but
No,
but
more
still,
than
you
that
know, you got to fool him.
Rod on the broadcast was like, "Wow, he got a call."
But hey, you got to fool him. You know, that's part of the process too. He at least contributed, and we know Blake Snell can get himself into some trouble, and the pitch count racks up, and he starts walking guys. And so, whatever assistance he got from Gary Sanchez, you know, contributed to 2 straight starts where he hasn't allowed a run, gone 6+. I think it's like 6 out of the 8 he's thrown quality starts. So he's been really, really good. You talk about the catcher ERA, and then the slug, the homers, and that's been something that he's got 4 of them. Brett Sullivan, Austin Nola, and Luis Camposano have combined for 3. And we've spoken at great length about Austin Nola's struggles offensively. And I think now, like, the offensive upgrade is the part that's obvious. But for the folks that were like, well, you can't lose Austin Nola because of what he does defensively and the way he manages the staff, all of a sudden, like, there's some giant holes in that argument as well, because Gary Sanchez and Melvin has raved about what he's done, not just offensively, but defensively as well.
Yeah, he's been great defensively. He's been fantastic defensively. And Michael Wacha, I think, is the guy who you got to bring up here, because I talked to him after the first time that he worked with Sanchez. That was on last Friday night against the Cubs. And he just couldn't quite find his rhythm. Season high 5 walks, 4 2/3 innings, 102 pitches, did have 8 strikeouts, but just couldn't quite find his rhythm. And he said when he's working with Sanchez on the pitch comm, he was calling most of the pitches, right? Because he simply never worked with the guy before. And then after Wednesday's game, and Todd, you talked to him, he said it was fantastic. It was great. Very few shakeoffs, meaning whatever Sanchez was putting down, Wacha was following because they were on the same page. That happened within 1 start. And in 4 days, in the conversations they were having outside of the game of baseball, they were getting together to get to know each other. And in that time, Sanchez made those alterations while he was still catching other pitchers, while he was still working and learning other guys, and by the way, still raking at the plate. So the fact that he is making these adjustments and figuring out his staff this quickly it's nothing short of incredible. In fact, Wacha even said, you said one of the hardest things you can do is come in the middle of a season as a catcher and learn 15 to 20 pitchers you have to work with. And remember, Wacha spent the majority of his career in St. Louis with Yadi Molina, who was a first ballot Hall of Fame defensive catcher. So he understands how working with catchers really can help you out. And for Sanchez to do what he's doing defensively right now is nuts, especially because exactly 2 months ago to the day, he was playing for the Richmond Flying Squirrels, which is in just AA in the Giants organization. The Giants never gave him a chance. The Mets signed him, sent him to AAA Syracuse, gave him 6 days in the major leagues and shipped him off. And all of a sudden he comes here and he's comfortable and he just turns back into Gary Sanchez. He was the fastest player in the history of the American League, not catcher, player in the history of the AL to get to 100 home runs. That's nuts. When you look at the long history of guys who have played in the American League, I don't understand how he fell off the way he did. And I guess just being comfortable and welcomed and loved in one place can make all the difference in the world for him, because he looks like the guy who was the 2-time All-Star in New York in 2017 and 2019 when he was one of the best young players in the game. And oh, by the way, he's 30. He's in the middle of his prime. And if he's not behind the plate, he's handling DH duties wonderfully. Again, it's only been, 10 games, 9 games, but this dude has been a revelation, and it could be the single thing that just goes, everybody, get your head out of your rear end and start going out and doing what you can do, because this dude resurrected his career and is going to resuscitate our entire season.
Hey, Derek, you said feeling welcomed. I think that's a big part of it, too. Yeah. With the Giants and with the Mets, Sanchez didn't really have a direct pathway to get on the field for regular catching or regular DH appearances. With the Padres, when he got here, when he got to this organization, he saw a need. He saw a place he could have everyday playing time. And he felt, and the team feels this way too, that Sanchez said, I'm needed here. I'm welcomed here. I'm wanted here. And there's a direct pathway for me to make an impact, something that maybe wasn't available in those other places. And anyone knows mentally that's part of it. When you see that you're wanted and needed and there's a way you can contribute, that helps. So maybe it's just as simple as that: right team, right time, right opportunity. And so Gary is flourishing in that. There's something to be said for that. Maybe if he had come to the Padres, last year or in spring training, this wouldn't have happened. But at this moment in time, where the Padres were really struggling at catcher and getting no production, they turned to Gary Sanchez, and he knew he was going to have some weeks, some games to figure it out and get cooking. And he has been cooking offensively and defensively right off the bat.
Well, also keep in mind, he did not have a team after the Twins, basically didn't try to resign him, became a free agent after 2022. And it wasn't working in New York in 21. It wasn't working in Minnesota in 22. So he didn't have a team, and even all through spring training, didn't have a team until he signed that minor league deal with the Giants on April 1st. But he did play for the Dominican Republic in the World Baseball Classic. And who was on that team? Manny Machado was on that team. And Juan Soto was on that team. And Luis Garcia was on that team. And Nelson Cruz was the GM of that team. And Fernando Tatis Jr., obviously another Dominican player who he knows these guys. And Bob Melvin even alluded to this. He mentioned Manny, Toddy, Cruz, even Rougned Odor, who has been around the league, around the American League for quite some time, as guys who really helped bring him in and welcome him and just make him feel like, hey, man, come on in. We're happy to have you here. You just go be you. So when you're talking about a clubhouse culture that is that good and that welcoming, that's a huge positive sign to me that they've found a way to somehow make guys comfortable there. And if you can get that to translate from the clubhouse, go down those steps at Petco Park and out into the dugout and onto the field, that's going to make all the difference in the world. So that shows me it's there. It just has to get that extra 30 feet from the clubhouse to the field. And then I feel like it can be fine.
And this is the flip side of, everybody's doing kind of vibe checks with this team and what's the chemistry like in this and that. And it's easy to notice things when a team is losing their struggle and say, hey, they're not getting along very well. The chemistry isn't great, this or that. Obviously, when a team is having success and scoring a bunch of runs, it's easy to say, oh, this team they get along great. They're having fun together. The chemistry is awesome, yada, yada, yada. When you hear Melvin say what he said about Sanchez and just the way he was kind of welcomed in and that whole experience, it makes you a little bit more encouraged about just kind of where this clubhouse is at, how the guys get along and that sort of thing. Because I think there's been situations in the past. Who was the guy in like 2020 or 2019 that came here and he was here? He was kind of an established big league guy. He's gone after like a couple weeks and he was like, that was a weird fit. And it wasn't an Adam Frazier situation. I forget. It was kind of a below the radar type signing. I forget the name now, but
Jake Arrieta.
It wasn't Arrieta. It was a position player. Now I'm going to be wondering about this, and now Derek's going to be wondering about this for the rest of the
I am.
podcast.
I think I remember what you're talking about. I'm trying to remember who it was.
Yeah.
Well, you think about it, Derek. What I don't get, I've heard the chemistry thing before. What I don't get and what's perplexing to me about that is what's changed from last year? It's basically the same team. You got Tatis back, but these guys, the majority of this roster had played with Tatis in previous years. You inserted Xander Bogaerts, who by all accounts is a great guy, great easy to play with. Often, yeah. I mean, what could be the chemistry problem? Did somebody not pay up at ping pong? What happened? That argument, I get it. And I know how chemistry is fickle and can totally flip a team, but what happened? Why was the chemistry great last year and this year it's bad when it's basically the same guys?
Well, I think it's a combination of what Darnay said earlier about, and it kind of just alluding to a team that has a bunch of talents versus a team that has to grind, with the A's, with Bob Melvin. So he's got all these dudes who are kind of very talented, but becoming stars. They're not established stars. You got those in Oakland. So those guys had to be on the same page. They had to grind. They had to get together and be a team. I think all these guys in the Padres clubhouse like each other, but I think there's been a big emphasis on, okay, you're an established star, Juan Soto. You do things a certain way that's made you successful. Keep doing that. Manny Machado, you're an established star. You've been doing things a certain way your whole career. Keep doing that. Xander Bogaerts, you're an established star. You've been doing things a certain way your entire career. You keep doing that. Jay Cronenworth, you learned in the Rays organization. You keep doing whatever you did that's making you successful. So you have all these different guys who get along well and like each other, but there's no system. You know, the Rays have a system. The Dodgers have a system. The Cardinals have a system. All these guys, the Cardinal way, you hear about it all the time. And we talk about it ad nauseum. So you find dudes who fit into that. So what feels like to me is all these guys have been doing what they've been doing the way that's always been successful for them, but it's not the collective, man, we all need to get together because the sum of the parts is greater than the individual pieces. Right now, this team is not adding, you have all these great individual pieces, but it's adding up to less than the sum of the parts. So you have to somehow find a way to get everybody on the same page and start maybe, like they said, I think Joe Musgrove even talked about it, like go out and have dinner with each other, go to a movie, you know, go to a club, go do something to get everybody kind of working together in the same regard. I was out there on Friday. They took a whole full-blown infield before the game. Like it looked like a college pre-game infield where they're hitting ground balls or turning to them. I'm like, this is awesome. Like we're getting everybody on the same page, the little things like that. Maybe they need more of that so that everyone kind of comes together and they understand how their games fit together. There's no personality problem with this team. It's how do these different parts fit together with their different games and the different way they've learned how to do things. That's, I think, the big missing piece. And when they find that part out and figure out how to put all the pieces together and put the puzzle together, they can take off. Now, I just don't know how or when they're going to do that. That's the problem.
Hey, when they did that infield, did they practice relay throws to home plate from left field?
They had a couple guys doing cutoffs, yes.
Did they execute it? Or did the catcher run wildly to first base?
No, they did not do that part of it. No.
Okay.
It was,
just checking how the infield outfield drills
went. The infield looked great. The infield connecting with the outfield, maybe not so much.
All right.
Before we wind down, I did mention Ethan Salas and
yes.
a young man that's of great interest to the Friar faithful. It had his first big league homer and an impressive one the other night, continuing a fantastic start to his minor league career. And Derek, you made the venture to Lake Elsinore on Sunday and got to chat with the young man. What jumped out to you from that experience?
He is more mature than I am, which you get granted, not hard to do. Not hard to do. He is he's just my buddy Wes can tell you this too, right? Like I remember a few years ago, like 2018, we were coaching Little League and I go out to spring training. And you know, we're talking about just seeing Tatis for the first. I come back, I'm like, dude, this guy's gonna be a freak. He's gonna be the real deal. He's gonna be legit. And I had never felt that way about another young player / prospect. Talking to and looking at Ethan Salas, I get that same feeling of this guy's gonna be a freak. Like he is so talented, but B, especially as a catcher, he's wired just the right way. Like he's measured, he's mellow. He works hard. He has this different, like Manny Machado level understanding of the game, but also just the mentality and the demeanor that is perfect for working with pitching staffs. And you look at the bat, I mean, the quick hands, the quick stroke, the approach, his first at bat as a professional, he goes 8 pitches and lines a double to left center field. By the way, he's a left-handed hitter. So lines a double the opposite field after 8 pitches, after seeing, never seeing real professional pitching before. He's real. And they were even saying up there, just kind of off the record, like, we think he'll be up there in 2 years. Like he was 16 at the time. The last catcher who was a teenager to start a Major League Baseball game was 1991. And it was freaking Ivan Rodriguez, who turned out to be pretty good, who caught 21 years in the major leagues. And yeah, I know whispers of PEDs, but is in Cooperstown right now. So if you're able to get as a catcher to the major leagues as a teenager, which this kid, by all accounts, they're going to give him a chance to do, and he's probably ready for it, as Wave FC head coach Casey Stoney says when talking about her youngsters, if you're good enough, you're old enough. I think that applies here as well to Ethan Salas. Just being around him and talking to him like, dude, he's direct from Central Casting. Like there's not a hole in this guy's game or mentality. Like I don't see any way this guy doesn't hit as a big-time, multiple-time all-star at the big league level unless injuries hold him back. That's really the only thing that can do it.
And when we had John Conniff on last week, and if you haven't had a chance to listen to that episode, we talked about Ethan for like 20 minutes, as well as a bunch of other, Robbie Snelling, other guys in the system that have done well. So always great to hear from John. So if you haven't, go back and check that episode.
John's
but he said to me, he'll probably be the most exciting prospect since Tatis, which is, understandable. Now there's been some good ones, there's been some exciting ones. But then when you talk to the manager, he kind of backed that up. And so it's one thing hearing it from like our types of folks, the media folks, but then when somebody who's in the trenches with the guy says, oh no, yeah, like that's the comp. That's the last guy I saw that had that type of stuff is pretty darn impressive.
Pete Zamora, the manager of the Storm, who's, by the way, now 30 years in professional baseball. I said, what's the comp? He's like, probably Tatis. So, okay. That kind of confirms he knows the game a lot better than I do. And by the way, it was when in 2016, when they first got Tatis in the trade, Zamora was with the rookie league team where Tatis went. And he's like, it reminds me of the same thing. Like that's the guy that I go to. And I'm going, damn. Like
pretty amazing.
That's real.
Pretty amazing. Well, we got to hop off. Good news, guys. I figured out who it was.
Who?
Brian Dozier was signed for the 2020 or 2021 season and asked to elaborate about his frustration. I'm a big transparency guy. I like people to be honest with me. That wasn't the case over there. I had to get out of there. I'll leave it at it. Sounded like more of a Jay Singler thing, so I don't want to project that on the Padres or clubhouse or anything like that. But Brian Dozier, that's the guy who I was thinking about, kind of the weird brief stay within the Padres organization. But I don't think that's
forgot Brian Dozier was ever with the Padres.
Me too.
I think most of us did.
What's Brian Dozier doing right now?
Not listening to this podcast. Thanks, everybody.
Baseball, I don't think.
No, I don't. Not that I know of. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Peace out.